On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Maria Latushkin. She is the Group VP of Technology and Engineering at Albertsons. We're going to be talking about AI and supply chain. We're going to be kind of touching some of the questions that we need to be asking about assessing options, about ROI, prioritization, pilot programs. Maria, thanks for being on the show to chat with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great topic, and I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. All right. I'm pretty confident most people know what Albertsons does, but I don't want to take it for granted. Tell us what the company does before we dive in.
Albertsons it's actually the company is Albertsons, but depending on where you're located, you may know us as Safeway or Vons or Pavilions. We have many different grocery stores, and we try to bring the freshest, best product to our customers.
Awesome. I'm sure somebody has seen one of those brands somewhere. All right. The topic, obviously, Albertsons supply chain has to be core to the business, and AI seems like a great place. Before we dive into just the AI question and supply chain, when you think about executives' roles, they have to make these decisions, assessments, they have to pick directions. When it comes to AI, it almost seems as though it's expected it's the right decision to pick up and implement a version of Gen AI or AI, whatever that solution is, or just in general technology solutions. I guess the question is when you're looking from an executive engineering lens, how do you assess? How do you decide? Hey, this is the right option. This is the way we need to go forward.
I find that the common mistake people feel is having a solution looking for a problem and saying, hey, I have, and especially with new technology. And oftentimes when the whole AI boom started, like this turn of AI boom, which is the Gen AI boom, people actually were asking me, do you have a Gen AI initiative? How do you employ Gen AI? And really, I think the more important question to ask is what big problems do you have or big opportunities in the business that you want to get solved? And then once you determine that, you can determine whether you want to solve it with Gen AI, a different flavor of AI, or it's an altogether different type of a technology that would be the best fit to solve that problem. And once you start looking at it that way, then you can ask yourself kind of next layer of questions. If you talk about AI, what is it really good at? What is it excellent at? What will it be excellent at sometime down the road? And is that the right way to solve your problem? And I think once you answer all these questions for yourself, it becomes a really easy decision of whether you use AI or you don't use AI.
Absolutely. I guess, when you look at supply chain, it's massive. We could dive into that and be stuck into supply chain for episodes upon episodes in and of itself. Lots of data, lots of moving parts, lots of complexity, standardization depending on particular vertical, the particular industries. When you think of supply chain, and I guess we could talk about it, obviously the context of what you guys do, but when you think about supply chain and the opportunity itself of finding a more efficient solution, what are the biggest problems that you're trying to tackle with a more advanced solution?
And I don't necessarily, there's obviously problems with any kind of vertical, but when I think about supply chain, modern supply chain, I actually look at it in a much more optimistic way of opportunities. And what has happened, well, first of all, everybody's tired of talking about COVID, but COVID did a really interesting thing. It highlighted what happens when supply chains get broken. It highlighted the importance of supply chain, and it really made kind of the whole world think differently about supply chains and move differently in terms of accelerating progress and development within supply chains. And the big opportunity is really the holistic view on supply chains as part of the bigger picture, not just supply chain as warehouse management or something else, right? It's how it fits into the whole enterprise. That's one. So that whole connected system. The second piece is a much more real-time, much more dynamic way of looking at supply chains. And this is really where technology comes in and gets to shine. Third one is having these feedback loops where every output needs to be an input to somewhere else, and that some next, like the next link in the chain, needs to be better and smarter based on the output it gets from the previous link. So the feedback loops become critical. The other thing that I also do credit COVID that to some degree, but I think it's just the whole nature of the world accelerating at much faster pace than it seemed to have done before, is the need for optionality, the need for dynamic movement, whether you think about ordering, when you think about fill, whether you think about different nodes in the supply chain. And so where technology comes in and becomes invaluable is in its ability to create these extensible structures and design for optionality in mind. And now if you think about, system design, when you think about AI specifically, like these are the things that it becomes the learning systems, the ability to, like the probabilistic nature of it, this is really where it gets to shine.
I want to go back to the COVID opportunity, because obviously as a consumer, I saw a very different interaction with my local grocery store. All of a sudden I could pick up, they could deliver. I had options I never thought. We kind of were talking amongst ourselves and we were like, well, would this option, would it have existed if it wasn't for COVID? Did it solve problems, unintended problems? Because obviously you're put in positions of having to, as you mentioned, providing optionality. When you kind of were to, I guess, take one step back, look back and go, there were decisions that had to be made at a very fast pace. If you were to look at that time and then spring forward, not little only do we know 24 months, 36 months later, and with AI, are you taking the learnings of that speed of execution, that speed of delivery into these next set of technologies to kind of extend everything that the company's done that you've seen?
For sure. I mean, if you think about it, like it's like a genie, you open the lid and the genie is out there. And like once people saw how enterprises can move faster, the expectations are different, right? And then the other part is, the great part about it is that once enterprises themselves realize that they can move faster, and here's how, and they did move faster, to your point, enterprises across the globe started moving differently at a different speed and started making decisions differently. You can't undo it. It's like it's out there. And for me as a technologist, that's great news. And so I do see that now companies move much faster and make choices and are taking leaps really at a much greater clip than before across the board.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. I think I was speaking to a leader and I said, everything has become engineering. Before there was internal IT that supported some of these business initiatives. And now engineering is driving a lot of initiatives that before only happened at startups. We only saw that type of engineering first, engineering forward type of thinking at startups. But larger organizations, I guess, when you have to, you have to. When you're looking at that and you're looking at prioritization of what Gen AI or AI could solve, how much of an advantage is it now being a little bit more engineering forward in thinking as an organization?
There's a giant advantage, because really, like, now is the time to seize the opportunity. And, for larger companies, you have to be really, really judicious. I mean, for everybody, but the larger the scale, the more the impact, right? And so you have to be very judicious. You have to be very discerning. You have to ensure that you hold very dear responsible AI, the privacy aspect, security aspect. So scaling, operationalizing becomes a really, really important task that you almost have to think about that first before you even start and lay really solid foundation. But once you lay the foundation, once you have the structures, once you feel good about what you're about to build, moving fast becomes almost an imperative for all types of shapes and sizes of organizations and different verticals.
When you're looking to take advantage of a solution like Gen AI, machine learning, AI solutions, you guys have probably not only just a very wide supply chain, but also a deep one. And you have a last mile also, because people either walk in the store, they order it, or they pick it up. There's a lot of, like I said, like a lot of moving parts, lots of opportunity. I guess from a business perspective, if you're looking at areas to add most value and obviously trying to find opportunities, are you almost tackling the wider problems? Are you looking at more narrow focus problems? Because within supply chain, there's a light to bite off, but obviously, as you said, data has to link. So in my head, I'm thinking all these systems still have to kind of work together. Data will have to flow upstream, downstream. How do you prioritize where you identify that low-hanging fruit? Maybe that's the real question there.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the company, every company would be different.
Sure.
And companies' appetite and prioritization would be different. But if I had to think about it like in a logical framework almost way, I would say, okay, what is my size of the prize? And where, and I would, it's a gradient, right? And so you look at it, then something might be smaller size of the prize, but it might be also easier to do versus the really large, hairy problems that you actually do want to start working on, even if you're not going to get the immediate result. And then on the other axis, you look at several things. You look at total cost of ownership, because you might be actually, to achieve the result, the implementation might be really high. When you're talking about compute, when you're talking about the future dollars in compute, you have to think about that too. In certain cases, you solve a problem, you don't have high compute, you don't have like the high ongoing costs. In other ones, you will. So that has to be taken into account. Feasibility and the readiness has to be taken into account. To your point, do I have the data? Do I need to create the data? Is there a safe way for me to have the data? Is the data internal, external? Like, where is it going to come from? And where is it going to go to? And then you also have to look at operational readiness, including internal employees, right? Like, what, depending on the solution, what will it take me to take it off the ground? And once you score that, certain things start, the ones that you really want to tackle start bubbling up to the top.
As you start looking at obviously, if you're going to implement, you can start with the pilot. How are you, or how is the organization, or how will organizations rather start assessing ROI? Obviously, efficiency gain, we can put numbers around it. There are different aspects of that become a little bit more difficult to put numbers around it. Optimizing shopping experiences, we can put some. So when you start looking at ROI and you're trying to actually, going back to the business focus, the prioritization, making sure you're picking that right, component to work on, that ROI piece, how does that work itself into these conversations?
Well, there's some initiatives that are pure dollars, right? And it's just a formula. But outside of those, you kind of have to look at strategically what's important to the company. And there's sometimes the ROI might be more qualitative than quantitative, but it might be moving an organization closer to some strategic goal. And that may be worth gold, right? So there's different flavors, different kind of lenses with which you can look at it. Sometimes you want to build, you would have a sunk investment of sort where you say, I'm building a platform and, here's my roadmap to at some point having actually been able to reap results. Again, depending where a given company is at and whether it's, company happens to be in optimization mode, then you really probably look at more of something that's like hard calculations. In some cases, depending if you're in a growth mode or you're trying to get a new market or something else, you may be looking at it from that lens. I'd say that regardless of how you look at it, it's really important to be clear about which path you're taking and what you are planning to measure, and then measure it. Like, to me, that's really the recipe to success in these types of initiative.
I guess as we were just talking about ROI, and obviously within supply chain, there are lots of different things that might benefit different groups, end users, people who go to the grocery store. And obviously some of these impacts to optimizing, improving the supply chain will yield differentiation, are we seeing an opportunity? Because obviously, when I think of grocery stores, obviously from the outside looking in, I just only see the groceries on the shelves. I go, I buy, come home, and it's fine. A lot of times I don't see differentiation. A lot of times I don't see, oh, why this person or this company is better. But I'm almost starting to think they're maybe moving away from being viewed as a commodity to, hey, you can actually develop your own differentiation based on your AI that sits within your supply chain, that sits within your marketplace, that sits within your company, that I could go, oh, well, this is why I go to Albertsons, because I walk in the store, I walk past the aisle, they stick the coupon in my on my phone number, and I'm already saving money. And I guess that's, thinking about being more engineering first. Is this opportunities for an older industry? Don't want to use legacy, maybe, but an established industry to find differentiation outside of what they typically do?
I think that every company should be really focused on delivering the best value to the customer, regardless of what you're in the business of. And then how you get to that best value to the customer may come in a myriad of ways. And in a lot of times, they are not immediately. It's kind of this overall feeling of goodness. It's all of a sudden things are better, faster, more relevant. And there's usually a lot of thought and engines behind creating this, just like the feeling of goodness, right? And so AI specifically, or any kind of technology, really, I would say, has to be additive, has to be in service of creating these experiences, whether you optimize some sort of a process, whether it's, regardless of how far in the chain, the links of the chain in creating this value for the customer, it would be doing something to optimize it, to make it better, or to create the new ways of working that's going to eventually lead to better value to the customer.
I guess as you're looking at initiatives, some of these tools are immature, some are early days, some are more build because the solution's not there. As you're kind of thinking through build versus buy and some of the advantages of each, obviously, right? You own the IP versus leveraging someone's IP. When it comes to Gen AI, are there going to be differences in how you approach build versus buy, particularly in Gen AI? Obviously, different solutions were for different times.
I actually feel that Gen AI, in a lot of ways, follows the same methodology, kind of the same path that many enterprises have been successfully choosing with previous technology as well. So if you think about it, all these companies that one would partner with, they are your SaaS providers, right? They are investing feverishly in trying to be better their competition, in trying to offer better solutions, etc. So it would be a shame not to take advantage of that. And so a very healthy portion of the strategy is to make sure that wherever you do already partner, you're able to partner successfully with the innovation that those companies work on themselves. There would always be certain things that would be bespoke because of either IP or some unique proposition, or maybe the company does something in such a unique way that they wouldn't get it to the extent that they would like to from a partnership, and that would be bespoke. And so you continue, and Gen AI follows the same path of bespoke earlier as to, if you think about what's the right tool for the job, and Gen AI seems to do the job in a uniquely great way, then you do that as a bespoke solution through Gen AI.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you see that some of this proprietary building that you might do, obviously enterprises are always trying to extend their solution, incorporate more. Does anything change in terms of your view of that particular model or particular changes to the model that, obviously you're trying to implement for your organization? You obviously don't want it to get into the bigger solutions. Is that going to be any different battle when it comes to enterprise software, or is that just different technology, different day?
I think it's a little bit of different technology, different day. And the reason I say that is part of like what I've started with in terms of setting the right foundation. You have to set the right foundation with all of the guardrails on privacy, security, and data management in such a way that when you develop something, you don't inadvertently wind up contributing your data, your IP to the outside world. And provided you do that from the beginning, then you don't really run, specific risk with Gen AI because you will have thought about it. And that is probably the main one of many, but one of the really big reasons why I keep stressing the fact that like the proper foundation is the key. It should never be an afterthought. It should be something that you start with. Even if you're starting small, you should still take care of the basics in this case.
Awesome. It's actually funny. I was talking to a leader in data governance, and I was like, did you think 20 years later that you'd have one of the cool positions now within a company? Because when we talk about the foundations, I mean, he's now in all the major conversations with Gen AI solutions and data quality. And I was like, these are all the things that we've talked about for years, but they have really just come to the forefront of the attention. And when you said, obviously accelerating an optionality, and we're looking at solutions to market. When you're looking at pilot programs, how big or how small, especially when it comes to Gen AI, because obviously some people are dipping toes in the water, some people are headlong. Is there a right or wrong size, or is it just appetite for investment?
There's two words that come to mind with pilot: feasibility and kind of viability. The first thing that could be really small is the actual technical feasibility. But for a pilot to be run in a commercial environment is much more than a technical feasibility. It has to be the commercial viability. And that becomes, the only way I can answer that question is to say it depends. Because for that one, it does truly depend on the problem you're solving. And sometimes you're able to see the commercial viability of your pilot really quickly, or with a small data set with a short duration, etc. And sometimes you can't. So I would say for like an actual pilot, it's whatever is going to give you enough indication that you can scale before you invest as much as you need to invest into the actual scaled solution.
Maria, I appreciate it. This is your second time on the show. I didn't say that up front. We'll definitely, hopefully, have people go back and listen to the original show as well, because that was during COVID time, which was amazing. And this one
feels like 1,000 years ago.
I feel like it was a long time ago, but yet it feels like I just picked up and it was like we're talking again. So I do appreciate it. Thank you for being on again. Thank you for your time. We could talk about this for a while, but obviously we have to let you get back to it. If somebody wants to touch base about what we talked about or anything you've mentioned, is there a good way of reaching out to you and getting hold of you?
Of course, I'm happy to. I'm on LinkedIn, and I think that's like the easiest, best way to reach me.
Okay, awesome. We'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Again, thanks for being on. That's it for the episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Two things. One, great episode about AI and supply chain, and we actually dove in a little about other topics in there, but related to the main theme. I wish we had more time. Maybe we'll have Maria back on again to dive into more and more details about this. I think we could talk about this for a while, but please share this with somebody else that also might find it interesting. Like, subscribe, comment, review. Tell me how we're doing. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.